Listen as 3 Montford Point Marines share a personal story of honor, courage, and commitment.
My name is Robert D. Reed. Served 26 years in the Corps from 1948 till 1974. The reason why I joined the Marine Corps was because at the time there was a draft, and when I graduated from high school, my buddies and I said, let's find out what the military is all about. Collectively, we said, let's do the Marine Corps. They seem to be some pretty tough guys. Now, we had joined. We weren't drafted, we joined the Marine Corps. They never told us that we were going to a separate boot camp. Well, the first couple of weeks was pure hell. My drill instructor, he was the one that told us that if you're going to be a black Marine, you're going to have to be better than anybody else. Better.
Subjected to very intense training, Reed and his fellow Montford Point Marines endured the hardships of boot camp, pushing them to limits most Marines had never experienced.
Well, the thing is, after my tour was up, came back to the States, and it just so happened that the Marine Aviation wanted to get blacks into their ranks. And I was one of the first blacks to go into Marine Aviation as an enlisted man. And my time in aviation wasn't until I got out of the Marine Corps.
Not only did the Montford Point Marines open doors, but they helped to set a precedent of courage for today's African-American Marines.
The Marine Corps was the last military service to be integrated. And I think that was the beginning of a new era of the Marine Corps.
The Montford Point Marines are extremely important. They were strong enough to take on a challenge that seemed to be insurmountable at that particular time. And for them, I do serve.
My name is Gene Dowdy. I was born in Stamford, Connecticut. I was really appointed by the Navy Department to serve in the Marines 7 months after the famous 8802 presidential proclamation allowed us to go into the Marine Corps. So I was one of the original pioneers. Montford Point Camp was a segregated camp. We felt the indignity that was thrown at us, but we had to learn, we had to face all of these challenges that we had.
Shortly after graduating from boot camp, Gene Dowdy's typical duties as an admin clerk shifted as the commandant began increasing the responsibilities of African-American Marines in the war campaign.
We ended up on the Isle of Iwo Jima. I landed on D-Day, incidentally, with a few ammunition companies and depot companies. It was very unpleasant, but I prevailed. I was glad to be in the Marine Corps, and I'm glad that I was honorably discharged. By going into the military service, I would consider, again, very gainful and a real true benefit.
The legacy of the Montford Point Marines, much like the famed 54th Infantry Regiment and the Tuskegee Airmen, is significant in the history of America and its armed forces.
I think it's something that a lot of people need to hear, to appreciate what they've actually done and to appreciate the opportunity that they created.
Charles O. Foreman. I joined the Marine Corps because I happen to be one of those people who does not like to be drafted. If I've got to do something, I like to do it on my own. I was ordered to go to Jacksonville, North Carolina, Montford Point. My experience in the boot camp was very typical.
During his time at the Montford Point camp, conditions were tough, as he was forced to build them within wooden huts surrounded by the heavily rugged Jacksonville, North Carolina terrain.
After boot camp, the war in the Pacific was of course proceeding, and what was created was what they call the First Colored Replacement Battalion. And this was a group of men, I believe it was about 100 in the group. At that time, I think I had been promoted to a three-stripe sergeant, and I was responsible for all these people. We sailed out of San Diego to Oahu. While there, I carried the title of Acting First Sergeant. Well, we actually stayed there for the duration of the war. If you asked me the question if I had it to do over again, yes, I would do it over again. Being in the Marine Corps helped because it gave me the backbone not to accept what was handed down. If you want something, you better stand up and fight for it.
Today, there are thousands of African American Marines serving in all fields and in every occupational specialty of the Marine Corps.
If a Montford Point Marine walked up to me today, I would say thank you. Thank you for paving the way. Thank you for creating an opportunity.
While there, I carried the title of Acting First Sergeant. Well, we actually stayed there for the duration of the war. If you asked me the question if I had it to do over again, yes, I would do it over again. Being in the Marine Corps helped because it gave me the backbone not to accept what was handed down. If you want something, you better stand up and fight for it.
Today, there are thousands of African American Marines serving in all fields and in every occupational specialty of the Marine Corps.
If a Montford Point Marine walked up to me today, I would say thank you. Thank you for paving the way. Thank you for creating an opportunity for myself and my brothers in arms that's come before me and those that are come after me.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Myra Valle. I am the Service to the Armed Forces and International Services Director here in the Los Angeles region. As we get prepared to celebrate 140 years of the American Red Cross, I am compelled to tell you the reason why Clara Barton started our organization. It is due to our armed forces, the sacrifice that she saw, the injured soldiers that she was able to heal and nurture. She dedicated her time to support our military. Fast forward 140 years, we are continuing to serve our armed forces and their families with education, with services, with support. With the education, I have the honor to have some of the Montford Point Marines here with us today to help us learn history of the Montford Point Marines, their dedication, their commitment, their valor. Please help me with a virtual clap as we get our Master of Ceremony for this evening, Mr. Sergeant Major Charles Cook, to start us. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Myra. Thank you, Myra, and your team for honoring the Montford Point Marine Association with this honor of being celebrated by the Red Cross, the International Red Cross, for Black History Month. The celebration that the Red Cross is giving us is so much gratifying for the organization and for the Corps. At this moment, I'd like to say thank you to the Zoom audience. We appreciate you guys zooming in to listen and enjoy and learn about the first Black Marines. I think I would be remiss, though, if I didn't say or ask that we all give a moment of silence for the over 500,000 patriots, citizens that have lost their life through the COVID-19 pandemic. So if we could give a moment of silence, I sure would appreciate it. Thank you. The Montford Point Marine Association is almost 58 years old. 1941, the President of the United States signed an executive order integrating the armed forces of the United States, that all citizens could serve in the services, and especially for the United States Marine, who had been very, very, very staunch on allowing minorities to serve in their ranks. At that moment, he integrated and directed that the Commandant of the Marine Corps train Black Marines. Marines or applicants, recruits came from across the nation to join the United States Marine Corps. The records say it was over 20,000 of them. The Corps found a way to make the president's order fulfilled, but they put us at a separate location for recruit training. Instead of going to the traditional boot camps in San Diego and Parris Island, they created a boot camp for us at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, in an area called Montford Point. And at that point, history was made. The recruits built their own recruit training and went through those rigorous weeks of hell to become Marines. The Corps is a very, very big, what we call Semper Fidelis, always faithful organization. And from that point on, through the Pacific Rim, those Marines that went through Montford Point made history. And today we hope to give you a little insight into what that was, what they went through, and you're going to get it from those Marines that actually fulfilled those dreams for us. A little bit about myself. Charles Cook Jr., 30 years United States Marine Corps, retired Sergeant Major. I wouldn't have been able to do that if it hadn't been for these gentlemen that we're going to listen to today. With that, I will tell you that we're going to have an invocation, we're going to have a pledge of allegiance, we're going to have the national anthem, you're going to listen to the Montford Pointers, we're going to have some question and answer, and then we're going to have a wrap up. And with that, we'd like to get started with the invocation by Colonel Henderson, United States Army retired.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cook. Uncover and let's bow our heads. Spirit of abundance, God of grace, Mother of hope, we pause now to remember those stories that are all around us, but so often passed over. Those stories that have been told or shared because of what someone is, not what they are. This month in our nation's character is Black History Month. Help us to realize that Black history is all our histories. May the day come when these stories are so widely taught that no month need be separately divided. We know this day will not come until we make different choices. We pray now for those new choices. May we come to see a day where the prison system becomes redemptive, not punitive. A day where the legal system learns to focus more fairly on the facts and not colors of our skin. A day when our schools are well funded as the needs demand. May our role models be allowed to excel when they strive and not to be taken down for their rich heritage. We know that this will require a shift in power, and this can be scary for some. Give us, full of fear, hope. May we come to know grace so that our hearts will not be hardened to the pain around us. There are so many beautiful stories needing to be told, and we need to get the chance to hear them. Widen our vision so that the history that is shared this month and every month can come to be known as our history too. We are most human when we see the humanity in others. All glory be to you, Father, now and always. Now everyone say, amen.
Amen.
Recover.
Our next item will be the Pledge of Allegiance that will be led by Master Sergeant Retired William Trammell.
Please join me as we recite our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next will be our national anthem, and it will be sung by Miss Melinda Hale.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Hoorah!
Hoorah.
That's outstanding. Now we will get started with our discussion. And the first Marine that I'm going to bring to the audience is a First Sergeant of Marines. He served in the Marine Corps from 1945 to 1968. He retired. If he had had his druthers, he probably would have retired about 10 years later. The Marine Corps said it was time for him to move on with and do some other things, and he actually did. He's the architect of BART in San Francisco. Without further ado, First Sergeant Jack McDowell.
Good afternoon, everybody. As the Sergeant Major said, my name is William Jack McDowell. I joined the United States Marine Corps 76 years ago in April of 1945. Spent 23 years in the Corps and went through boot camp at Montford Point, graduated, and found myself in the Western Pacific on the island of Okinawa. I got there about 3 weeks before they dropped the atomic bombs on Japan. And by late September, we were in Japan on occupation duty, providing humanitarian support for the folks in Nagasaki where the second bomb was exploded. Following our short tour in Japan, we ended up in northern China, providing security services and assisting in getting Japanese prisoners repatriated back to Japan. A year later, I was back at Montford Point and became a weapons instructor. My military occupational specialty while I was in the Marine Corps was basically infantry. Not in sequence, but throughout my 23-year career, about 15 years of my service time was spent with infantry units all over the world, well, primarily in the Pacific, in Central and South America, Middle East, and East Coast of the United States. Of my 23-year service, about 4 years was a drill instructor training recruits in San Diego, and about a year and a half with security detachments at a couple of naval installations. And then I spent about 2.5 years working in American embassies as a detachment commander of Marine security guards at a couple of embassies. Went to a lot of schools in the Marine Corps, Warfare School, Mountain Warfare School, Escape and Evasion School, you name it, firefighting schools. I became a rather enthusiastic sports parachutist for about 7 years. And as I previously mentioned, participated for a short period of time near the end of World War II. Was with infantry units during the Korean War and the Vietnam War. If you are in infantry units in the United States Marine Corps, you can't take your family with you wherever you go. So not a good career for a family life. The embassy duty and drill instructor duty I found to be very interesting, very challenging. Something that I hadn't planned on getting involved in when I joined the Marine Corps, but I have to say I learned a heck of a lot. My 23 years in the Marine Corps was great. I enjoyed every moment of it, with the exception of injuries and hospitals. To me, it was a hell of an education. I visited parts of the world I would have never ordinarily seen. Got to serve with some really fine people, some of the best guys in the world. Extremely dependable, tough, capable, a little nuts, but I guess you have to be a little nuts to be a Marine because it gets you through the tough times. 5 years of my service was in racially segregated units, which I thought was kind of stupid and a waste of time. But that's the way it was then, and it's all changed for the better. We've got African Americans, including women now, in all rank structures and in all occupational specialties. And I think the Marine Corps and the country is all the better for it. If I had to do it all over again, I think I'd do it twice, but I'd finish college first rather than getting my master's degree at 70. But all in all, it was a great career. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot, and I think I'll end with that note. On that note,
thank you, First Sergeant. I'd like to add a little bit to First Sergeant's description of the Corps. As some of you probably noticed, is that the Marines that are going to be talking today integrated and infiltrated the Marine Corps ranks all within a 10-year period. The Commandant of the Marine Corps at one point had said he would rather have 5,000 white Marines than 200,000 Black Marines. By the end of the Pacific campaign, he had to eat his words. The next person that we're going to let talk is Staff Sergeant Dave Calmer. He served in the United States Marine Corps from 1949 to 1972. He's retired.
Hi, I'm Dave Culmer. Most of my life has been circled around Montford Point because it was such a devastating and challenging experience in my life based on my life prior to coming to Montford Point at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, March the 19th, 1949. My career is not nearly as illustrious as First Sergeant Jack McDowell. I never went all the places he went and did all the things he did, but nonetheless, it was pretty exciting. But I think far and away, Montford Point was the highlight of my 20 years in the Marine Corps over a 24-year period, because I left the Marine Corps on 2 different occasions. Once for 12 or 14 months, and I re-entered, and I left again for another 2.5 years, and I returned. There was something about it, like the call of the wild, perhaps, that kept beckoning me back. And I don't know, maybe it was a bunch of other Marines. But anyway, the devastating effect for me on Montford Point was that it was as hard as humanly possible, but it was fair. And the reason it was so hard was because the older drill instructors, DIs, had life experience and they had Marine Corps experience. And they experienced a lot of things during their life before the Marines and during the Marine Corps. And they knew that in order for us to make it, we literally had to be as tough as the white guys. And if we faltered along the way, that's exactly what they would have expected us to do. And they were there to make sure we did not falter. The rigidity in the discipline, as I say, it's almost inexplicable. To have a man in formation shaved with sand and a broken bottle is something that people, don't understand. They just cannot fathom that. One of my shipmates, during an inspection in boot camp, upon the drill instructor inspecting his back, his clothing in the back, his bayonet, he pulled the bayonet out, stuck the bayonet in the sand between our heels if the bayonet was dirty. The bayonet went into my friend's boot, and he pulled it out and stuck it in the sand. And several men later, the assistant drill instructor touched the senior drill instructor and turned his head and beckoned, and there was blood coming out of the boot of this Marine. And the senior drill instructor went back and asked him, he said, "Son, did I hit your foot with that bayonet?" He says, "Sir, yes, sir, I think so, sir." He said, "Do you want to go to the sick bay?" He says, "Yes, sir, I think so, sir." He said, "Take off and go to sick bay." At Montford Point, everywhere you went in formation, drilled as a unit. If you were not in a formation, you double timed. And so Ray Copeland cleared the platoon and started double time with the bleeding heel of his boot. And the DI told him, "You can walk, son." And I only say that just to bring out the rigidity of the discipline at Montford Point. I used to touch my arm after 9 o'clock at night, pull the blanket in totally around me, and I would touch a cigarette to my arm, and the intent was to wake up out of this nightmare. And of course, I never woke up, except I had some red marks on my arms in the morning. I will close with this note again with regard to the discipline and the rigidity. I had to wear a sand pack about literally probably over half of the time I was in boot camp. Always minor infringements, not listening, not doing what I was told instantly. And once we were in the head and I always had a place to rest my sandpack. The sandpacks weighed anywhere from 60 to 70 to 80 pounds, depending on who filled it up. Usually two guys that filled it up and hoist it to your shoulders. And when we were showering, another guy in boot camp said he saw my shoulders and they were all red. The veins were popping on my shoulders from the straps of the sandpack. It didn't bother me, but it's just pressed the skin to where the veins were showing quite red. And he was alarmed, but they didn't hurt. So I don't know where to stop. So I have it if I just stop here. And thank you so very much for allowing Montford Point to get another step toward global recognition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant Comer. Sergeant Major Cook here again. I will add a little bit to what Staff Sergeant Comer talked about, but I'll start with this. He retired from the United States Veterans Administration Services. So as you can see, he was destined to serve veterans, and he was destined to serve in the United States Marine Corps. He came back and forth 3 times. The discipline at Montford Point was because the older recruits and older drill instructors there that turned out to be some of our most historical figures in the Corps knew that we had to be somewhat better than our counterparts. So they pushed those Marines to their limits and sometimes over their limits. But the results, as you see, was miraculous. One of the members of that group is a gentleman called Hash Mark Johnson. He retired as Sergeant Major. They called him Sergeant Major because he had, when he joined the Corps, I think 4 or 5 hash marks. He had been in a couple other services and he had always wanted to be a Marine. When the opportunity came, he asked for an inter-service transfer and went through boot camp and later on became a drill instructor. The Montford Point Marine camp is now named for him. It's the only Marine Corps facility named after an African American. With that, I'd like to introduce you to Captain Eddie Hicks. United States Marine Corps retired. He served from 1948 to 1972. You notice I said captain. He was enlisted and then commissioned, all within that time frame. Captain Hicks?
Yes, sir. After listening to the previous men talk, I tell you, there's not too much to add except to amplify what they already said. First of all, I'd like to say it's certainly a pleasure to be here today amongst all these Montford Pointers and the Red Cross. I'm very happy that they're here to recognize us. About Montford Point, I always remembered one thing. Our drill instructors always said, if you want to succeed in the Marine Corps, you have to do everything better than any white Marine alive. I never forgot that. In all my career, I never forgot that message played on my mind all the time. And if you look back, you'll see most of the time that's what we had to do. Now, as far as promotions and all that in the Marine Corps, we all knew they were very hard. I'll never forget the first time the race came out, I was on Guam, and there was 84 people eligible to make corporal. We spent one whole day in the field digging foxholes and taking weapons apart, and the next day we spent all the day with written exam. Make a long story short, whenever the list came out of the 84 that were eligible, 4 people made it. That gives you an idea how tough it was to make rank. Seriously speaking, I wouldn't have made any rank at all, probably, if it hadn't been for the help of other Montford Pointers. Montford Pointers helped each other. That was the only way that we survived. I could name you several of them that just helped me all along sometimes they just see something in you that they know that you have great potential, but it needs to be developed. One of my greatest experiences was stationed at Camp Pendleton when we got ready to go to Korea, to make the Korean landing. That was the first time that the Marine Corps was prepared to hit the beach in an assault as a totally integrated service. That made me feel great to be part of that of that operation. And I'll never forget also some things that happen in combat. You never forget. I never forget the ship number I was on, LST 883. On the morning of the 15th, I looked over the side of the ship, my ship, and guess who was there? The flagship, General MacArthur, was there. He and General Arthur P. Smith were looking through the binoculars, looking at the invasion. Those were real generals. They fought right along with you. I'll just say this in closing. At that Incheon landing was one of the highlights of my career. I'll never forget when those doors opened, when we hit the beach at H+2, and when I saw all the fire and the bullet, I said to myself, Eddie Q, this is no dummy run. This is the real thing. And everybody knew that was the real thing. And that's where you get a lot of confidence in the Marine Corps and a lot of respect. At that particular time, we had to unload 8 LSDs before 12 o'clock, before the tide went out. When I was driving a truckload full of ammo, and when we got off the ship, we had to reload and go back and get more. Guess who was helping me load the truck? Not PFCs, not corporals, colonels, sergeants, majors, everybody. That's where I got a lot of respect for the Marine Corps. Everybody tipped in. Whenever the deal goes down, everybody has to chip in. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much. As far as my commissions go, it hadn't been for the Vietnam War, we know that a lot of us wouldn't have been commissioned. But I remember I was stationed in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, and the Marine Corps were losing so many officers in the Vietnam War. The commandant put out an order. He said, any staff NCO that would like to put in for an officer can do this. We're going to have a temporary officer program. The sergeant major looked, there was about 14 of us staff NCOs at the detachment there. He says, you guys go home and talk it over with your family and come back Tuesday morning and decide what you want to do. You have to write a letter to the commandant saying why you don't want to become an officer or to be considered. When he got done his spiel, I said, Sergeant Major, where's the list? He said, right here. I said, he said, wait a minute. You haven't been home to talk about it. I said, let me tell you something. There's something you don't understand, Sergeant Major. What's that? Anytime a black man thinks he has a chance to become an officer, this man's Marine Corps, he better sign the paper or he's crazy. That's all I have to say.
Rock Captain. Hey, Skipper, we really appreciate that. I will tell you that being a Mustanger in the United States Marine Corps, and especially during the 60s and the 70s, was a very hard role to maintain the professionalism that you needed, because you had to go between 3 or 4 different lines. Captain Hicks did that. The Marine Corps accepted the Black Marines, African Americans, into the Corps' ranks probably faster than what anyone ever thought. And today, the results of that is that the Marine Corps has had 4 African Americans that have been Sergeant Major of the United States Marine Corps. That's the top Marine in the United States Marine Corps. We also have, for the Montford Point Marine Association, we have a ship named after us. We have a monument that's built on the outskirts of the Montford Point Marine Base now. And we also have been awarded, the Montford Point Marine Association, the Congressional Gold Medal of Freedom. With that, I'd like to introduce to you a gentleman that is a trailblazer in his own right. He's a Colonel in the United States Army retired. He's also our chapter chaplain, but his history goes to and is Montford Point. Chaplain Henderson's brother was an original Montford Pointer. and we'd like for him to give us a brief about his brother.
Very well, thank you. As I've indicated, my service was in the Army, but my connection with the Marine Corps is through my older brother, David E. Henderson. On the 25th of June, 1943, he celebrated his 18th birthday. The next day, he went to the local draft board to register. I went with him. I was a Boy Scout, so I dressed in my Boy Scout uniform, put on my campaign hat, and after he was registered, I told the registrar to sign me up. And he looked at me and he said, "Son, how old are you?" I said, 13. He said, "If we don't hurry up and win this war, I'm going to come looking for you." Well, in September of that same year, my brother boarded a train and he was going somewhere. He didn't know where. No one told him where he was going. We didn't know where he was going. But we did receive some letters from him, perhaps 6 weeks after he had left home. And the return address said Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. He didn't tell me it was Montford Point. Well, he was given a furlough for Thanksgiving, so he came home in November. He was wearing a green uniform. That's when we knew he was in the Marine Corps. Now, while he was at home, we all slept in the same room. I had a younger brother, so there were 3 of us. We slept in the same bedroom. And I noticed that every morning, he would get out of bed and tell us to get up, make up our bed, sweep the floor, and tidy up in our area. And I said to myself, what's going on around here? Well, I guess that was part of the training he had received in the Marine Corps. Well, he left home, and I think he went back to North Carolina. I'm not sure. But we did get another letter from him, and the return address said the 51st Defense Battalion, anti-aircraft. And my sister and I read the letter, and our neighbors used to ask us, "Where's your brother?" I said, "Well, he's now in North Carolina, battling lions." We didn't know how to pronounce battalion. We called it battling lions. Next time we heard from him, he was in San Diego. I don't know exactly how long he was there, but it wasn't shortly thereafter that he sent us a letter, and it had an APO address. That's the Army, I think they call it Army Personnel. I forgot APO, what APO stands for. But at any rate, it's an address which is not the exact location of the sender. Well, he was discharged in February of 1946. He came home, but he never talked about his service. I didn't ask him about his service because he wasn't willing to talk about it. Well, in 1998, he passed away. Before he passed away, 2 years earlier, I told him, "You've got to tell me what you did in the war. Someone's going to ask me one day, what did your brother do in the war?" Well, he finally opened up, and he told me when he left home, where he went, when he went to San Diego, and he served in the Pacific during World War II in an air defense battalion. But there was not much of a threat from the Japanese Air Force. So his battalion was ordered to fire into caves, into the entrance of caves, because Japanese soldiers were hiding in those caves. It had a lasting effect on him because he told me that the Japanese soldiers that came out of those caves were bleeding from their eyes, from their ears, and they were really in bad shape. And he looked at them and he said to himself, this could have been me. He was only 19 years old, and he saw that death and destruction, and that had an impact on him. Well, he's going away now, but I am proud that he served in the Marine Corps. He was ordered a Congressional Gold Medal, and I sent that to his daughter, my niece, and she was very proud of that. She lives in Marietta, Georgia, and she put on a program at her corporation and displayed her father's awards, the certificate, the medal, etc. And she was very proud of that. And they were very proud of her, that her father had served in the Marine Corps. Mr. Cook, that's as much as I need to say.
All right, sir. Thank you, Colonel. I think for the Marine Corps and also the Montford Point Marine Association, we have thousands and thousands of Black Marines that served in World War II in the Pacific and were vital parts of the campaign across the Pacific. They became Marines 100% at that time. With that, I think we're going to close the discussions. We're going to let Mr. Trammell take questions from the audience. Mr. Trammell, you got it.
Thank you very much. I am ready. And if there are any questions, would you please read the questions, and I'll try to direct them at some individual. Please go ahead and read some of the questions.
Okay, I'm going to read those out to you now. Our first question is, do you think the actions of the Montford Point Marines had an impact on the military and political leaders of the late 1940s?
I'd like to direct that question at Jack. Jack, could you answer that question for me, sir?
If I understand the question,
Are you muted?
if I understand the question, it comes from an individual who's asking about what impact racial segregation had on politicians. Is that correct?
Yes.
Tell you the truth, I really don't know. I suspect that it's pretty much like today. Politicians come from all walks of life, from all parts of the country. I think that many of them came from backgrounds, from states where racial segregation was prominent, acceptable. Some probably believe that the military services, just like a lot of civilian entities, should remain racially segregated. On the other hand, there were others that thought racial segregation in any form, in any organization, was an abominable practice. But nevertheless, what happened in the 40s, when the president signed an executive order to end segregation, that was Harry Truman, and fully integrate the military services, I think everybody got on board with that, and it seems to have over time worked rather well.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. The next question, please.
Our next question is, what factors motivated the Montford Point Marines to fight for a nation that did not give them full civil rights?
I'd like to start answering that question by saying it is the same motivation that motivates us all even today. But back in the 40s, when the proclamation was signed, there was an effort for young men to do something bigger, better, broader than themselves. And joining the Marine Corps and fighting for this country was one of those things. That is the same today. People want to fight, and I say people, I'm talking about men and women who want to fight, serve this country, and the emphasis is on serving this country, to do their very best to show their patriotism, their love for being citizens of the United States of America. No better place on the planet to serve. Next question, please.
Next question is, what conflicts did the Montford Point Marines participate in?
I'd like to direct that question to Mr. Dave Comer, if that's okay.
Well, that's okay, but I think the master spokesman, First Sergeant Jack McDowell, since he participated in every battle that ever transpired in the United States, he would be most appropriate to answer the question rather than me from hearsay when he has the experience, if he holds it down to an hour and a half.
Jack, will you take that question, please?
You've been very kind, but passing the buck again. Primarily speaking, those Montford Point graduates, Marine Corps, served in the Pacific Ocean areas during World War II, starting from about late 1942 and all the way through until 1945. They were involved in just about every island battle in the Pacific Ocean area. If you watched the movies of the day and newsreels, you rarely saw any African-American Marines in any of these battles. But they were there, as was previously mentioned, some 17 or 18,000 were there. But for some odd reason, the news media and the filmmakers at the time did not seem to want to include African Americans in their portrayal of those stories about those battles. After World War II was over, as you can imagine, the overwhelming majority of the people who were serving in the military, including the Marine Corps, got out. It was the end of hostilities. The war was over on both the European continent, North Africa, East Africa, and the Pacific Ocean area. So everybody in all branches of the service by 1946 were out of the military. In the Marine Corps went from close to 500,000 persons in it, of all races, all the way down to around a little under 50,000. And of that amount, there were only a trickle of African Americans left in the Marine Corps, under 1,000. And most of those were restationed again at Montford Point Camp, a few at Naval Ammunition Depot, McAllister, Oklahoma. And there was an effort to get the Marine Corps back up to 100,000 people in the late 40s. And it's a good thing that they achieved that goal, because in 1950, the Korean War broke out. Those African Americans who were in the Marine Corps during World War II, who decided to make the Marine Corps their career, that is to stay in 20 years or more, also fought in the Korean War. And a few after that war remained in and also participated in the Vietnam War. So to answer the question, World War II, some during the Korean War, which started in 1950, and quite a few who remained also participated in the Vietnam War, starting from about 1964 or 5, all the way through to the end of that war, which ended in 1974-75.
Thank you, Jack. Could we have the next question, please?
Yes, the next question is, how were Black Marines received when they returned from the war?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, how were the Black Marines received when they returned from the war?
I think the question is, how were Blacks treated once they returned from the war? We are talking about World War II. Captain Hicks, could you answer that question, please?
Well, I can't answer from World War II, but I can answer from the Korean War. When we came into San Diego after Korea, I was on the USS General Mann. That was the biggest rotation they ever had came back so far from Korea. The 4,000 of us on one ship, and when we come into that harbor, the fire boats were skeeting water. The Red Cross was out there with donuts and everything, and all you had to do was go and sign your dream sheet. You could go any station that you wanted, you could get. You were really the cream of the crop. But I heard a lot of people say that when they came back from Vietnam, they didn't get that kind of greeting. It was a whole together different. It was a different ball game. That's all I have to say.
Well, thank you very much. Next question, please.
Next question coming in the chat is, what advice do you have for service members currently serving?
The question is, what advice do we have for the service members that are currently serving? Sergeant Major Cook, could you answer that question, please?
The question is, what advice do I have for service members in today's armed forces? Is that the armed forces of today is probably the premier service and warfighting mechanism in the world. It is integrated, it is diverse, and some of the best training in the world is given to those young men and women who join. What I would say to you is, do your best, do what you're told, stay sharp, and take advantage of the benefits that you have while you're in the service, because they will go with you for the rest of your life. And there's nothing like serving the United States of America. Those things never go away. I'll just say that anytime I walk into a place where I might have some Marine Corps paraphernalia on, and there's another Marine in there, no matter whether he's yellow, green, black, or white, I'm going to normally hear this: Simple 5. And that's our initiation to another Marine, regardless of who they are. Thank you.
Sergeant Major Cook?
Yes.
May I add a one-liner to that question?
Yes, sir.
One line is, keep your eyes and your ears open and your mouth shut. If something is wrong, you don't have to be the person to speak up about it. Somebody else will do it.
All right, sir. Top.
Could we have the next question, please?
Yes, the next question is, what difference do you see between the young people entering today and when you joined the Corps?
I'd like to take that question. I joined the Marine Corps in 1958, and I served 24 years. And I have been somewhat involved in visiting Marine Corps recruit depots on both coasts. And the type of young men that I see are eager to serve, hard chargers, and there is no difference between their eagerness, their esprit de corps, and their willingness to go to war. Now, I say go to war, but I really mean their willingness to defend this country no matter what. They are enthusiastic, they are hard chargers, and I would be proud to serve with them. Does anybody else have a comment to make about that?
I'd like to comment on that. This is Jack McDowell. I had an opportunity about a year or two ago to go down to San Diego Marine Corps Recruit Depot. As most people know, the Marine Corps only has two places where recruits are trained, men and women. Parris Island, South Carolina, and San Diego. Parris Island, South Carolina traditionally trained male Marines. Then some years ago, they started training female Marines there. And that was the only place that female Marines were being trained upon entry into the Marine Corps. San Diego has recently begun to do that. But down at San Diego, they have a museum, the Marine Corps Museum there. And I had the opportunity to spend a whole day there talking to recruit platoons that were getting ready to graduate, that came through the museum. And I had an opportunity to talk to about, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 young Marines, all men. And the questions that I got, the response that I got, led me to believe that Master Sergeant Trammell is correct, that there really is not much difference between the young people coming through today and the ones that came through back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. I think the young people that are coming through these days are a hell of a lot smarter than the folks that came through in the 40s and 50s. But that's because of our country's educational systems, technology, and what have you. They seem to be a little bit more informed about those things. I think that physical conditioning wise, the folks many, many years ago were in better physical condition than the young people these days. So that's my assessment.
Can we have the next question, please?
Actually, Sergeant Major Cook, I want to allow our Division Vice President of Humanitarian Services, Mr. Michael Jordan, to speak. He has a few words to share with all of you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sure, welcome aboard.
Sergeant Major Cook, Michael Jordan here.
Hoorah, sir.
I'm a retired Marine major and combat veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Desert Storm. Gentlemen, I cannot tell you how much it means for me to sit here as a Marine, learning about all that you did back in the day, and we're carrying on that legacy. But you're an inspiration, and when I hear your stories here tonight, you gentlemen are trailblazers. And that's what Marines do, and that's what they teach us to be, as trailblazers.
Yes,
and I was really inspired by the particular comment of one of the gentlemen who said that in spite of the racial injustice that you gentlemen endured, become Marines, you wanted to serve your country at that time the same as everybody else, and you thought there was no better place on the planet to serve than the United States and to be part of something bigger than themselves. So I wrote down those words, sir, and I will pass those on. But I can't say how much it means to me and how humbled I feel to be sitting here and listening to your stories. God bless you guys. Semper Fidelis.
Thank you, Major.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Top.
Yes, sir.
Maya.
Go ahead. If you have a comment, I'll ask my question in a sec.
No, we were getting ready to go back, but why don't you go ahead and take it from here?
Thank you so much. Mr. Hicks, I believe you said this, that there was a time that 84 people wanted to be a corporal, but only 4 were selected. What gave you the perseverance? I'm just, what all of you men overcame and continue to fight and did not allow any discouragement to make you quit, make you just say, this is not for me, this is not how I want to be treated. What pushed you to continue?
Well, I still think it was just the the indoctrination that the drill instructors had given us. They always pounded and pounded and pounded us. You have to be better than everyone else. But also you got to remember that there in the Marine Corps system, some of the occupational fields became top heavy with rank. For example, I was in motor transport for a while, and you know, like I remember in 1970, whenever the rates came out, I was in a motor pool at El Toro. There was only one sergeant in the whole motor pool that made staff. His name was Sergeant Lucky, and he was lucky. But that was because the rank structure was so top heavy. That happens a lot. And that's what causes a lot of people to change fields. In particular, what you have to do is you have to look around and see what other occupational fields are open to you and you qualify for that will make you advance more. I always thought, I can't be that dumb, so there must be somewhere to go. That's when I switched over to marine aviation in a different field, and all the study that I had done, everything paid off. In other words, you have to stay on top of things to make sure that just because you are in one particular field, you don't have to spend your whole life in there. And the Marine Corps makes a way for you to make changes depending on your ability and what your desires are. But it's all fair, it all works out in the long run. It's the personal thing that you have to decide what you want to do.
Maya, may I add a little bit to what the skipper just said? The Marine Corps has always had a reputation of being the best fighting force in the world. And when African Americans got the opportunity to be part of his ranks, we just knew that we had to do as good or better than our predecessors. When they gave us the opportunity to be Marines, that was like the cream of the crop. You know, the Marine Corps has always been hard on the members of his ranks, and it was hard on us because they were trying to make sure that we were right for the Corps. We knew we were, and I think those gentlemen that went through Montford Point from 1942 to 1949, 46, 49, understood that, and they persevered. And sometimes when you're in those types of situations, your perseverance becomes much, much bigger.
Thanks, Sergeant Major. That is a great response.
So much. There's another question I believe that wasn't answered in the chat. It says, in addition, what mentorship advice would you give to your time in service?
Part of this is Bill Trammell. Part of the answer was given is keeping your mouth shut, doing what you're told, and following instructions and paying attention. Part of that answer was given by Dave Comer, and that is still true today.
Yes, sir. Eyes and ears open and your mouth shut, and you'll make it. I'd like to, if I may, go back to Myra's previous question, the driving force. For me, it was boot camp. If I didn't stay in the Marine Corps, all that I experienced in Montford Point would have been for nothing, and I'm not going to let that happen. Okay, I'm not going to take a beating like that without getting my licks in. One experience I had at Cherry Point, I was working on reciprocating engine propeller-driven aircraft. R4Q2 is the designation of the aircraft, a tricycle landing gear. Well, the maintenance chief, these are master sergeants, had a bet. There was 9 cylinders on each of these 2 engines. And a guy named Slim Gonzalez, a guy from Cape Verde, and the maintenance chief had a bet that he could not pull a cylinder off of that airplane and have it in the line shack in 1 hour. And he bet me that he could. And he says, okay, you're on. He said, I want one mechanic. He said, Dave Comer, I'm the only black guy in this squadron. He says, I want Dave Comer to help me pull that jug. And I went out there on that airplane and I started busting safety wire and untorquing bolts, and I had the cylinder off. He walked into the line shack in 59 minutes and me trailing him. So that's what Montford Point did.
Hoorah!
There's something a little more subtle to that response as well. Boot camp for me was 13 weeks. And what I learned in boot camp was there cannot be any quit in me. I've got to get it done. If I'm assigned to do it, I have to get it done. So I will get it done. Now, my MOS happened to be communications electronics. And there are times when things were tough and we had to get it done. And there was no quit in us, no quit. That goes for you too, Major.
Story.
Myra, that's it for me.
Myra?
I'm actually, yes, sir.
I have a short story about that.
Please share.
In 1950, when we landed in Korea during the famous Incheon landing, September of 1950, that Captain Hicks mentioned, I was in an outfit called Graves Registration. Our job was to pick up dead bodies and get them back to the beach so they could get them onto the ship. Very nasty job. About 4 days later, because the infantry units were running out of live bodies, and this Graves Registration group was mostly African Americans. A bunch of us got called back to the beach and were told that we were being reassigned to the infantry units. Well, most of us were infantrymen anyhow. But up until then, for the most part, African Americans could not serve in infantry units. Well, that all changed overnight during the Korean War in 1950. A group of us were reassigned to infantry units. We were sent across the river into the capital city of Seoul, South Korea. At the time, the Marine Corps had been moving through the capital of Seoul on street-to-street fighting, pushing the North Koreans out. And I was assigned to the 5th Marine Regiment, and it took me about a day and a half to find them because Seoul is a rather large city. And so myself and a couple other guys wandered around until we finally found the outfit that we were supposed to join, reported in to a lieutenant. I was assigned to a weapons company to take over a group of 28 Marines, 81 mortar section. And it did not go well because there was a white sergeant in charge who had come in the Marine Corps before me, but I had made sergeant before him. And so I was senior, and the lieutenant said, "You're in charge." So all of a sudden, overnight, I went from 5 years of racial segregation to taking over 28 Marines and all white guys. And they were in a state of shock when they saw me. And the sergeant that I relieved, who had been in charge of these guys from day one, was from Paducah, Kentucky, and he told me in no uncertain terms to get out of his face. And I said, well, if you got a problem with me, you go see the lieutenant, take it up with him, which he did. He came back, he had a rather poor attitude and kept calling me the N-word. And over a period of a month and a half, he and I tried to talk to him, but it didn't work. And so for one reason or another, and it didn't take much, we ended up in several fistfights, of which most of the Marines enjoyed and were taking side bets about who was going to win, and, including the lieutenant. And I was determined that this guy was not going to beat me, and he was a pretty rough character. And one day, he had me down on the ground, and he was choking me, and said he was going to kill me. And I really thought he was going to do that. And somehow or another, a rock ended up in my hand, and it made impact with the side of his head. And he was out. And I knew I was going to go to jail for the rest of my life for murder. But a medical corpsman, a Navy medical corpsman, because the Marine Corps doesn't have any medics, they're all Navy people attached to the Marine Corps, came over and brought the kid back to life again. And from that moment on, we kind of tolerated one another. Well, we got out of Seoul, went back aboard ship, went around the peninsula, went north, and we found ourselves in North Korea, eventually in an area called the Chosin Reservoir. And that's when the Chinese came into war. And we did battle with them and got out of there in December of 1950 and went south again and got reorganized and started moving north again. And in January of 1951, I was shot in the ankle and went down on the side of a hill. And the North Koreans were firing down, and my guys saw what happened, and three of them came running out and grabbed me, and one of them was the sergeant that had been trying to kill me. And they were dragging me back, and he was calling me the N-word and complaining all the way. And I finally got medevaced out of there. Well, that was in January of 1951. He came in the Marine Corps in 1944. 1964, he retired, went back to Paducah, Kentucky, was killed in an automobile accident, and I went to his funeral. And I met his mother and father, and they said to me that he always talked about me. And in a respectful way. And I said, well, that comes as a surprise because he and I didn't get along very well. And he said, and the father said, well, that's the way he was. He respected you because you never quit. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, First Sergeant.
Sergeant Major Cook, could I add one thing to that?
Yes, sir.
All the stories that we've heard today, I think if anybody can relate back to World War II, I mean to the Korean War, when President Truman had a meeting with all of the generals in D.C. and General MacArthur was contemplating the Incheon landing, President Truman asked him who did he want to lead the invasion? Did he want the special forces? Did he want the airborne? His answer was, MacArthur's answer was, give me the Marines. This is why what you heard today.
Okay, this is Sergeant Major Cook. I think we're gonna kind of cut it right there. I think that you probably got a good experience of what the Montford Point Marine Association is all about. It gives you a little history of the African Americans in the United States Marine Corps, and it also lets you know that the #1 and greatest military organization in history is the United States Marine Corps. The Marine Corps went from being a segregated organization to a totally integrated organization with diversity. And within 15 years, we were kicking ass and taking names in every climbing place, again, with all races.
Sergeant Major Cook, can I have time for 7 lines for anyone
Yes, sir.
that's not a Marine? It will help them understand.
Yes, sir.
The wonderful love of a beautiful maid, the love of a staunch, true man, the love of a baby, unafraid, have existed since time began. But the greatest of loves, the quintessence of loves, even greater than that of a mother, is the tender, passionate, infinite love of one drunken Marine for another.
Hoorah, Super Five. I guess on that note, we'll go ahead and do what I think we call on the itinerary a wrap up.
Before we get to that, can I have 5 minutes or less? A minute.
You can have a minute, Tom.
I'll take a minute. We at Montford Point are Marines who consider ourselves the ultimate in fighting force. But we would like others to join us. We'd like for the community to join us in our support for other veterans organizations in the Los Angeles area. So if you would like to join us, please contact me, William Trammell. My phone number is 805-512-2215. My email address is vicepresident@montfordpointla8.org. We'll find a home for you. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed this.
All right. All right, guys, we really appreciate you guys coming on board. I'd like to say that we are so grateful to the Los Angeles chapter of the Red Cross for allowing us to be celebrated by them. And we hope that the folks that chimed in on the Zoom enjoyed, had a little laughter, learned a lot of history about the United States Marine Corps and also about the Montford Point Marine Association. We would also like to let you know that every year we have a birthday celebration. It's a tradition in the United States Marine Corps that we celebrate November 10th for the birthday of the United States Marine Corps in 1775. And every year we have a cake, we eat cake, and we shoot the breeze and have a good time. And we would like to invite any of you that might be interested to check out our website, which is www.mpmala8.com, and the details of our birthday celebration will be on there. And we could also, if you decide that you want to just donate some money to our organization, we have a site that you can go to Zilly and donate money. And you donate it to support@mpmala8.org. Again, support@mpmala8.org. And with that, we will ask the chaplain to do our benediction.
And thanks, Major Jordan.
Uncover. Let us bow our heads. Eternal Father, as we end this program, we praise you and give thanks for our gifts of freedom, justice, and peace. We ask your blessing for our nation. Be with our leaders, national, state, and local. Bless our veterans who lie in sickness and poor health. Grant them comfort and knowledge that they are not forgotten. Let us not only remember the POWs and MIAs still accounted for, but let's also remember our brave men and women now on peacekeeping missions throughout the world. We ask that you keep them safe. Continue to sustain us with your strength. Preserve us with your power and protect us with your hand. We ask this in your holy name. Now everyone say, amen.
Amen.
Recover.
Amen.
Myra?
Thank you, Sergeant Major Cook. As we wrap up this evening, I just want to say to our special guest that I am honored to have met you, grateful for your sacrifice, and humbled by your stories. Your experiences as Montford Pointers are deeply powerful, personal, and most importantly, unforgettable. Thank you all who attended and participated this evening. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome, you guys.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank the Major, Major Jordan.
Yes.
Very good.